Welcome, welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. If you could say that there was one theme throughout my podcasts in the last 8 years and almost 450 podcasts, I think there are several themes that come through. The biggest and clearest one that I'm always shouting at you is how to become fearless, how to release fear. What does that look like? What does it feel like? What's on the other side of fear? How do I approach that? And then we talk about vulnerability. And we talk about that if you want to get through your fear, the very first step into that passageway from fear to love is vulnerability. And so I almost feel like kind of the culmination of all my podcasts are going to be today, what you get to listen to today, because my guest is one of the queens of this topic of getting through fear, being willing to be vulnerable. And why this is going to be hard for both of us is because we have both walked a similar path in our journey of life through domestic violence. So even if this has not been your trial, please do not push the click buzz. There's so much here for no matter what you're walking through that I want you to hear what my dear friend Kerri Mossman has to say. Kerri, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Mary, thank you. Thank you. And boy, did you ever set us up for a great journey this afternoon. I have admired your walk, and you're right, we have similar walks coming from trauma of domestic violence. And it goes so much bigger than just the theme of domestic violence. Every single person has walked something that has created who they are, and then shattering those fears and standing up and rising.
Right?
And that is the place that is so powerful of turning everything that you thought was your largest hardship into something to just empower others as they're walking through the same. And talk about queens, you are the queen of that.
Well, one of the things I love about us is because we understand this piece that is, it does not matter if you have walked through domestic violence. It does not matter if you've walked through childhood sexual abuse. It doesn't matter if you've just simply had a mother that shamed you all the time. The thing is that we know what it's like to see
Yes.
another that they have walked the path of feeling not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the journey out of that is the same.
It is the same.
The rocks that we step over and how our path look might be different,
Yes.
but the journey is the same of learning that we are enough. I am
Yes.
enough.
Yes.
You are more than enough. That's how we were born.
Right.
All we have to do is just get rid of all the stuff we've learned in this life, and there we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
All
all
right.
the narratives of others that, from childhood, from, the very first formation that isn't our truth,
Right.
but has become our truth and then has shaped every decision and choice. And then you get to this place of, wait a minute, that
Yeah.
that was such a central piece in my story of growing up and being silenced. I'm an only child. And there were some things that I didn't quite understand why I was being silenced, and why, in hindsight, perhaps there was a safety in dimming myself, not outshining my mother. And how that transformed as I got older, there were ways in which I was, I was an athlete, and weight was very critical to my sport. And so I weighed in every week with my mom. And if I didn't hit that number, I was grounded. And in my household, when there's only three of you, nobody speaks to you at the dinner table. So for a week, it would be silence and then go to your room. And then I would weigh
Wow.
in again Friday morning. And that number that I was to attain, if I was a quarter pound up from it, I was grounded. And there was no exception to be made. And when I hit that number, which was such, I'm trying to think of the perfect word for this, but was so far out of reach. And it's only recently that I realized it was a way to silence me if I was grounded. So the number became just incredibly impossible to maintain, which led to eating disorders, which led to hospital stays. The outer appearance was perfection. The outer appearance was what our household in our town, um, what that looked like, who we were,
Yeah.
how I modeled this image. I was a figure skater, and so
That was one of my top kisses.
was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
She's either a gymnast, a ballet dancer, or a
Yep.
figure skater. Yeah.
And that is so common in the industry, but we're going back 60 years and it wasn't so common then as far as eating disorders. I remember being hospitalized and Karen Carpenter had just passed away, and it
Yeah.
was the very first kind of awareness of eating disorders. So I was very much, it was not the buzz that people would notice now. And so perfection and what that looked like and attaining that, there were severe consequences when I didn't. And it's only been recently that when I look at things, it was a way to just keep me silenced and kind of just like my mom's, the household that I lived in, she shone brilliantly. And I chose to walk in her footsteps by choosing the career that she was in.
Mm.
And so there was this training sort of that as long as I shone really brightly, but I didn't quite outshine her, everything was great. But the times in life that I began to outshine her, there was silence. And so as my world progressed, I was kind of trained that, I mean, that was a different type of abuse. But when I met my husband at the time, it just amped things up. And
Yeah.
it gave me so many opportunities to have a voice and to walk away. But I was also trained that image was everything. And I created this marriage and I was going to make the best of this marriage. And whatever happened behind closed doors, boy, we don't show that.
Hmm.
It just wasn't, uh, it wasn't something within me that I felt I could stand up to. And it was easier to take what I was living through than to bring shame. I was used to secrecy. I was used to projecting happily ever after when it was so far from that. And only when the abuse touched our daughter
Yeah.
did I find the courage and the bravery to just be a mama bear. And Maddie was 3, and there had been allegations at her daycare. To, I was out of town, and my parents had called and said, I was on a business trip, and they said, you need to come home right away. And they wouldn't tell me why, but social
Uh,
services had come to daycare and they were interviewing my child um, for possible molestation. And I knew there were so many things wrong in my household, but that was not something I ever would have picked up on.
yeah.
And immediately, it, it was just night and day of, I can't speak. I'm terrified to speak. But when it came to my child, I
Yeah.
roared.
Yeah.
And there was a time period where I could not grasp all the things that were wrong in my marriage. That wasn't one of them. And
Right.
so we're going through all of the different departments. I had to have a rape kit done on my then almost 4-year-old. And that just triggers more agencies getting involved and the sex crime division showing up at my house at 2 o'clock in the morning and being so terrified and going to court and uh, having to put trust in agencies to find the answer of did this happen or did it not? And then a judge saying, you have 50-50 custody.
Uh,
And that immense terror of
yeah.
she was so little, there was not enough proof to prove otherwise. Um, but what came, and in that moment, I've always had a very strong faith. I was raised with a very strong faith. And in that moment, I could not fathom that there was a God that would put Maddie in that position.
Yeah.
And what I couldn't see at the time is he was behind the scenes, keeping her safe, keeping me safe. And the journey of the terror of living in a house where you know everything that's going to happen, but the really scary part happens when you go against them and you try to be
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
And the stalking and just the terror that happened after leaving the house being so much greater than, when you live in domestic violence, you know the subjects, you know the tone of voice to anticipate before
Yeah.
something else gets escalated.
Yeah.
And you're always bracing and you're always on edge. And then when you're
Yeah.
removed from living in that, and you get a little bit of, you've got people noticing, you've got people watching, you're trusting the systems to keep you safe. There's a false sense of it's going to get better. And in my case, it definitely did. And God was right there putting instrumental people that might have only been in my life for a very small season, but they were crucial to get me to the next step of trusting and knowing that the system is going to work. And in my case, fortunately, Maddie was as well protected as she could have been. As that story unfolded, his spiral got darker. One of the big themes right from the get-go before I even met him was an addiction to prescription drugs. He was in the medical field and had access to prescription drugs, and I had never been around that, so I didn't see signs that I would certainly pick up very clearly today.
Right.
And the court system ended up, uh, there was a moment where Maddie went to school, and she was in first grade at the time. And it was the first birthday as a divorced mom where I didn't have my child. And
Uh,
she was so excited about, the over the top Disneyland dad type of birthday party she was supposed to have. And I got a call from the school the day after that weekend, and they said, you need to come right away. And when I got to the school, she had this residue in her hair that was white, and there were tiny little brush marks, little tiny scratches on her skin where her skin was not penetrated, but there were these little red marks all over her body. And my child had stood up and said she wanted privacy for her birthday. And she was telling her dad that She had a friend whose parents were divorced, and she was stating that she wanted privacy and she wanted to sleep in her own bed, and he imploded. And not being there, but knowing the state of how he was living his life at the time, I would assume um, he was not sober in that moment. And he had taken her upstairs and stripped her and taken a toilet brush with Comet and was scrubbing her skin and putting it in her hair and telling her that he was her daddy and no court system and no one was going to tell him whether or not what he could do with his daughter. And fortunately, she did share that with her child therapist, and we had an emergency order put into place, and we went into CASA. And CASA was the answer to our prayers. The safety of her being able to have for a year and a half some visitation with him, uh, watching her being able to feel safe because people were watching in protection. And then there was one moment where I got a phone call and was told to come in the middle of their visitation. And when I got there, there were police in the parking lot and they were handcuffing him with his chest against the hood of the car. And I happened to look up in the window and there she was just crying and screaming, "Daddy," because she didn't understand what had really transpired during the visit. And at that time, went to the court and said, "I'm walking away from all visitation. I will see her when I'm 18." And that was in August, and her memory of her dad was seeing him in that moment being handcuffed
Yeah.
and not understanding why. And there was no goodbye. And in January, the end of January, that next year, he committed suicide. And that having to walk that of how do you tell your child?
Yeah. That she would never see him in this life.
And her not understanding all the
Yeah.
pieces because she was so young. And that season of doing everything right for her growth, which as moms, that's what we do, right? I
Yeah.
did not realize what I was suppressing. And it has only been in the last 10 years that I was able to uncover all the pieces that I had sacrificed and based on silence and shame,
Yeah.
just isolated more and more and more and gotten quieter and quieter. And part of what you and I had chatted about, it's surviving that. Like we survived it. And that's such an amazing, beautiful thing. But I'm raising this incredible young woman that I never want her to feel silenced. I want her to rise and speak her truth and never be ashamed of anything because all of those things from when I was a child, that silence and that shame of an eating disorder at 13 and all those things of being punished creates an inner shame that is not my narrative
Yeah.
at all. And so letting all that go. And the title of my book is A Beautiful Undoing, and it's undoing all those falsehoods, all
Yeah.
the masks, all the costumes I wore to bend and conform and to be and to fit and sometimes to dim. And then the book came out, and then there's this kind of nakedness, this
Yeah.
vulnerable, like, and now what? Who
Mhm.
am I now? What do I do to fill everything I've just released? Who am I now and what am I becoming? And how do I look myself in the mirror for Kerri first, for my daughter second, of all of these things has made me the woman that I am. And to be able to sit with a woman that still braces when she walks into a room, who's scanning. Like, I don't know about you, Mary, but I scanned forever, waiting for something horrible to happen in the safest places. But that's what I was conditioned for. And so finding the ways to help others feel safe, that when you share your story, it gives another permission to, and me too. And I'm not, I mean, certainly the Me Too movement for women, but there's so many things as women that we're just conditioned. You don't talk about these things.
Yeah. How old is your daughter now?
She is 24 and
Oh my
she is
goodness.
thriving. Oh my goodness, she thrives.
I just had to ask because,
Yeah,
my heart is sitting with her right now, and the path that she has had to walk. Both you and
absolutely.
I thought our paths were tough, but I didn't have to walk that path. But I have tremendous empathy for her, and I just want to make sure she's good.
Yeah, she is um the this is a God wink. When I was like, how where are you? Like, I do not see you in my life. Like, how did I arrive here? I have a sweet baby that I'm trying to protect. Like, I would never
Sure.
imagine that this would be our life. And um when it seemed like the court system does the very best it can with where my fault, one of my many faults in this scenario, but in not telling, in not even telling a friend of what was happening behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I can manage it. Like, I know where the landmines are. And so
That's
I
the
never
shame,
called
the shame piece,
yes,
that
yes,
we grew up with shaming. And as adults, we continued to be shamed ourselves. Even if no
yes,
one else anymore was shaming
right.
us,
Yes,
we were shaming ourselves. And
absolutely.
to be able to set that piece down, Kerri, let me tell you, I'm at 72, and there are still times when I think, what is that thought? What is that feeling? Why am I feeling anxious? And I can actually say, oh, I've been feeling shame. I was shaming myself.
Yeah,
I mean, John, my husband, wasn't shaming me. My friends weren't shaming me.
yeah,
Nothing was shaming me but me.
yes. And
And
isn't it
when you can recognize it, you can set it down.
that's it. That's it. Well, my husband, Mike, and I just had a moment. We've been together 13 years and he adopted
Yeah.
Maddie and he is
Oh, oh.
I think you met him when we had that dinner.
Oh,
Um,
I think I did.
you
Yes.
did.
What
Yes.
a handsome guy.
He is a handsome
Yeah.
guy. And beyond how handsome he is, his heart is,
Yeah.
it has been made to love everyone. But I'm fortunate, and Maddie and his daughter, Kristen, um, have been fortunate to be loved very, very well. And he taught me a different way of what I don't think until him I knew what unconditional love was beyond what I felt
Um,
for my child and what she and our bond is so incredibly strong. But to have a man that I feel safe with, to have
yeah.
a man that I trust impeccably. And as I say that, we'd had a conversation this weekend about when we met, and he knew quite a bit of my story, but the shame, there were parts of it, when we first met that I wasn't going to share.
Right.
And so
I'm
I kept
still
using,
opening up and sharing new things to John. He's like,
yes,
is
right?
there more? I'm like,
Oh
probably,
my goodness. John
probably.
and Mike would have a field day together. But when this was so powerful, I was always using the word safe, and
Mm,
I had come so incredibly far from my own personal healing, working for Maddie's healing before I met Mike,
Mm.
or I know I would
Yes.
not have attracted such a man.
Yep. Same. Same.
Yeah, we're sisters in that,
Yeah,
right?
we totally are.
And being so independent on nobody's going to hurt. I am not going to rebuild my world again. I'm not going to go through um, having trust and thinking something some way to have it all shatter. I hadn't worked on that part yet to like, I'm worthy of a beautiful life.
Absolutely.
I was blessed that I survived what I had gone through. And that was the pinnacle of what I had aspired to do. And so Mike kept hearing the word safety. And I wasn't quite sure, like, I would bring it into conversation. And he was coming from a standpoint, we were living in Colorado. And he was like, okay, we moved into this house in a gated community. And in his mind, that was providing safety for me. Like all the things that I
Uh,
had gone through that I was terrorizing, living in this gated community, I wouldn't feel that. And so we just had this conversation over the weekend. And he said, I finally, 13 years being with you were never talking about the
phys-
community we lived in. Now,
yeah.
certainly having those foundational things helped me realize I had never felt comfortable putting my head on a man's chest of like, I'm leaning into you, or I'm
Yeah.
always the first to let go of an embrace. And he would try to hold me a little bit longer, and I would notice, okay, that's enough. And here we are
Yes.
13 years later. And I shared with him on Saturday morning, and I realized I've held this shame for so incredibly long, and I had never said it out loud. And I said, I was telling him when we had 50-50 custody in my divorce, my safe place was to go into the walk-in closet that I had. And when Maddie wasn't in the house, I took a big butcher knife and I laid on the floor where my longest dresses were with a pillow and a blanket. And every time she was away, that was this confined, tight space that I
Yes.
felt safe in. And I had to have this knife, which thank goodness I never had to use it because I don't know how I would have done that.
Wielding this butcher knife, right?
But I shared it with him Saturday morning. And he was like, why have you never told this to me? And I'm like, it is so shameful that like, that's where I was so
Yeah.
broken, and the tighter the area like, the only place I felt safe was in this c now, I certainly never felt that I was a mama bear when Maddie was in my custody, but when she was away from me,
Right.
I was terrified, and I said, "You know, when I come from that, and that was my safe space, and to trust a man that you're gonna just love me for who I am. And I've told you some horrible things that, like,
Right.
now I'm telling you, this is this broken woman that I was before I met you. And I'm saying it with tears in my eyes, but so freeing. Like, how many
Right.
years later that I let that go?
With an absolute assurity that he is going to love you just the same,
Yeah. Yeah.
no matter how naked you become.
Yes.
And
And
it was, you know, how that you said you had just shared this with Mike yesterday
yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
It was just last night that John and I were sitting on the sofa, and he kind of had been a little bit away from me, and he scooted over next to me and put his face up right next to my shoulder and said, "You know, Mary, no matter how old we get, no matter what we look like, I'm never going to not want to see you, to be with you." Right? And that's just kind of what I did, that big silent, oh, wow. Because as a woman, and particularly as a woman that's walked my path, to hear that another human being, another man,
Yes.
could see me buck naked and think, Come here, you.
That's
I
right.
love you. And so it's even now, I think it's the big fallacy that's out there that you and I can really help in this dispelling of, and that is that there is a healing point where that journey ends and a new journey begins.
Absolutely.
And that's just not how it works.
Right.
It is a process that is going to go on. I mean, we believe in this concept of eternal progression. So after this life, there is another life we get to
Mhm.
live that puts us in a new area of learning and depth of understanding and the process of of all. Some people get discouraged at that. I get excited for that. I'm like,
I do
"Oh,
too.
you mean I get to always learn? You mean I get to always understand more of this life?" And I understand the more I understand about this life, Kerri, the more we understand about other lives, the past life, the
Yes.
future life, the life that evolve around us. And that's a very exciting thing. I have a piece I want to unpack with you.
Yes.
S- Uh, there's so many things I want to unpack. I need like 6 podcasts to do this. But the first one that really struck me that I think is such an incredible piece to talk about because I've read a lot of survivor books, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's poverty, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's sex trafficking, I mean, whatever. There are those who are telling the story of their victimhood.
Mhm.
And then there are those who are telling the story of how they learned to thrive.
Yes.
And that is you. But the
Thank you.
piece I want to unpack is you had mentioned to me that it would have been easier just to tell the story of your husband and all of his foibles. In fact, foibles is not the word to use here. His incredible dysfunctional personality and character disorders. That would be easy to tell because it all lives out here. But you opened up this podcast with talking about your childhood, your pieces that you brought to this marriage, your learned dysfunction, what we call generational dysfunction,
Mhm.
the pieces your mom gave to you. Well, there's a Freudian slip that my
Yeah,
mom gave to me, right?
yeah, right.
And that you just picked up and you
Yeah,
held because you didn't know another way.
right.
And it's interesting because we were on different ends of the spectrum. When you were like having to step on the scale every year, every day, every week, and if you were above 60 pounds, then down came the shaming.
Yeah.
Well, on my end of the spectrum at the same time, if I stepped on the scale and I was above 120 when I had promised to eat differently, the shame
Yeah.
is the same.
It is the same.
And those are the pieces of not being enough
Mhm.
that you and I and everyone else brought to their next stage of life.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you were going to share about what your husband was doing and all the things that were happening because you were not in that. You had to hide it.
Yeah.
Hiding was the MO of our lives. And
Absolutely.
here's the kicker. It's the MO of everyone's life.
It is the MO of everyone's life.
And so it was interesting. Even our book titles are different, but the same. Yours
Yes.
is A Beautiful Unfolding, and mine is Unbounded. To have those cords of shame and
Yes.
fear and low self worth be cut one by one and
Yes.
feel them fall next to me. And yours is not a beautiful now, it's a beautiful unfolding, the opening, shedding what didn't belong to you.
Yeah.
Talk to me just a bit, Kerri, about that piece and how you allow people or share with people the value of looking at the entire enchilada and not just the
Yes.
cheese that's showing on top.
Right. Right. That's a fabulous question, Mary. I think one of the things that I'm so incredibly passionate about is so often, and it's all of us, like what you just said, it doesn't matter what rock we're climbing, we all have those hardships. We all have somebody else's voice in our head that
Yep.
you're not enough or this needs to happen and you're not achieving it. Whatever those things are that speak to us, that's not our voice. Our voice comes from, for me, I am, God, goodness, I think because of I'm trying to, perhaps when I know what year it was, I'm trying to guesstimate how old I was in that year, but maybe at 11.
Mm.
It was the middle of the 70s, and my parents took me to Akron University. It was probably a frat house that we went into, and I learned transcendental meditation with all these 20 something hippies. My mom and dad were there with me, and my dad slept through the moment they would start to meditate. My dad was out snoring. But I learned transcendental meditation to deal with the stress of skating.
Mm.
And so throughout the years, meditation has been my core. And it is what I've created kind of my own relaxation, my own grounding. And in that, recognizing, being able to, this is part of my story, whatever part of my story it is, this trauma. But this is the stepping stone for me to open my eyes. And as I've gotten older, sort of like, when we're kids looking in a kaleidoscope and you just
Yes.
barely turn it and the whole picture changes, the
Yeah.
whole perception. So I've always been a people pleaser and I've always been, I'm going to, whatever the event is, we'll use my ex husband as an example. I knew his childhood background. And so I could understand the hurts and all the things
Mhm.
that he had gone through that was who he was when I married him, although he had a very beautiful mask and a very charming background that was kind of the illusion before really knowing who the man was. Um, Whatever that piece of, whether it was my childhood, whether it was Jack and I, stepping out of I'm a survivor of this, or this is the trauma, and I'm going to carry this trauma and I'm not going to heal it. And so I'm going to create bringing people towards me, whether it's friendships or whatever, where I'm in that heightened state of trauma constantly
Yes.
and being able to put it down and to be able to just look at me. Just what was my part in it? What is the evolution of me as a woman looking in the mirror of what do I want to carry forward? Yes, this horrific thing happened in my life.
Mm.
How do I step forward? And it's those tiny little baby steps. I have a chapter in my book about it was a year after he had passed. And I just happened to walk through the mall and some woman pulled me in for, would you like a makeover? Would you like to? And she put a vibrant red lipstick on me. And I remember when she turned me around and I didn't recognize that reflection. I knew that girl in her 20s, but I had become so beige. I just wanted to fade into the walls. And I remember looking at her and saying, this is so little, but this is me reclaiming that sexy
Ah,
goddess woman.
bang,
And
bang.
from there,
Yeah.
I went straight to Victoria's Secret. And certainly I wasn't going to date anybody, but I bought the matching panties and the matching bra in a vibrant color just so I could wear them and feel, how do I get in touch with the woman I used to be? How do I get in touch with my femininity? And those teensy tiny little steps of
Yeah.
reclaiming who I am is just insane as that sounds of a vibrant red lipstick.
It doesn't sound insane at all.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. To some people it may, but not to you and I.
No. Yeah.
And it's when you can reclaim those itsy bitsy places that another place unfolds and another blessing that used to be a shame just rises.
Yeah. I love this idea of seeing us as a whole.
Mhm.
We are not just a bunch of pieces that happen
Yeah,
to live together in this physical body, but that we are a whole. And you it becomes impossible to love one and to hate another.
absolutely.
It dims the light of the piece that's loved, and it worsens the piece that is not loved because
Yes.
it feels that, can you love me? Can you
Boy,
love
that's
me as well?
beautiful.
And so the wholeness of what we present to ourselves is the key piece. And
Yes.
then we can present that outward. Kerri, what what do you want? What do you see as your vision for what's going to happen with this book of yours, A Beautiful Unfolding? And the impact, what do you want?
So, at first, writing the book was truly my transformation. And it took much longer than, my expectation of what that's like. And to just that inner spiral and revisiting things that had happened, but again, from a different perspective, a perspective of wholeness, illuminating the places that were not whole, the places that were such a stretch to include in the book of, ooh, there's shame here. And people are going to read it and people are going to have thoughts about it. And I held on to the book. It was finished, but I held on to it for quite a few years um, because I wasn't quite ready for
Oh,
the opinions of others and the judgment that may come from different aspects. And it was only when I had the opportunity to go to Africa and I was standing in front of these women that I had stood in front of the year before for a speaking engagement. And I was like, I need to show up with my book. Like, I cannot say I didn't have the courage as they have been
right?
so courageous with me. And so when the book came out, truly, Mary, it was, I just want to complete the book. Like okay, I got it published, it's out there. And I wrote it first for my healing. And I thought, if I could just help one person, if one person picks it up and can embrace some sort of healing and stepping forward, that's all I care about is
Yeah.
just one. And that happened in Africa before I released it in the United States in April of last year. And after that, I was thinking, what do I want? And so I was doing a lot of speaking on the subject matter of domestic violence and trauma. And the big one of the things that is a core in my book is forgiveness and
Uh,
coming to forgiveness for my abuser and the peace that gave and what it did for no one other than myself.
yeah.
And I share that in my book. But what came after it, and I think part of why I couldn't let the book go is I hadn't forgiven myself.
Bingo.
I can forgive everybody else as part of my story, but those pieces of Carrie, I could not love her yet.
Yeah.
And so it was in realizing after the book came out in the United States in April that, wow, I've done that. Like I've looked at every piece of that girl at every
Hmm.
stage along the way and held her and nobody needed to come save her because I was right here.
Yeah.
And so I think and what I want to do next is I'm writing book 2
Excellent.
and I want to be a presence that just helps women witness those moments be for someone else what I was looking for, but and I truly, when you look back on your life and you see all the amazing angels
Right.
that were right there all the time, and it's only in hindsight that you're like, "Boy, you know, you are amazing, God. You put that person," and maybe it was just a very quick interaction. And
Yeah.
I will can I share, like, what we talked about before? Mary, you were in the midst it's 2020, and I'm writing the book, and I'm terrified of what some people are going to think of it. And we had a very brief connection one evening, and you were sharing, you were being
Yeah.
so vulnerable and real and speaking to an audience that I was a part of. And I got incredibly teary. And I was like, that is a woman that stands in her truth. That is a woman that opens the doorway for so many of us other women to be brave enough and courageous enough to say, I step forward as well and I rise as well. So thank you.
You're welcome, Kerri. It's always interesting to hear the impact that sometimes you may never have any idea
Mhm.
when you speak. And when I speak, I know that others are touched. And so thank you for sharing that story.
Yes.
I treasure that. It means so much to me. Thank
It
you.
was 6 years ago, and here we are today.
Doing this, yes.
Yes.
I love you being here. I love all that you have brought to this program today. The the book first off, and then you most of all. But I remember going through this process of forgiveness. And when I finally realized that that was on my path, I was angry. I was scared. I was sad. I'm like, you mean this person that I have spent now 22 years trying to walk away from? You want me to
Mhm.
go back and love her?
Mhm.
I was doing my best to never be her again, to
Yes.
to to shame her out of my life.
Yeah.
And when I realized that she was actually the strongest little girl I've ever known, she survived. And she brought with her all these lessons. She's so strong. And my love for her just began to bloom and
Yeah.
blossom. Like, you you so beautiful, and here I thought you were so ugly.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh, please, I'm sorry for not seeing you.
Yes.
And come here. Let me just like hold you and relish you. And the interesting part is I'm in the middle of preparing for this award that I'm receiving in a couple weeks. And they want all these photos, old photos. And usually I'm like, well, I'm not going to show those photos. I'll show these photos. Photos of like maybe the last 10 years, those are old, right?
Eh,
But now to be able to show photos and watch that woman who I thought was so weak
Yeah.
survive and become strong and learn about resilience and grit and grace.
Oh, Grace.
I showed them all. I sent them all off. We'll see what they use.
I love it.
At the end of this podcast, you'll see the links
Okay.
to follow Kerri and to purchase her book online on Amazon. But this is the exciting thing. We're going to come back later. In fact, maybe they're going to be, no, they won't be simultaneous. This podcast will come out first. But I'm going to come back later and add a second link to the back of Kerri's podcast because we have some exciting news for them, don't we?
We do.
Something that's going to happen a year after the publishing of your book. What are you going to
It
do?
is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
You're going to release your Audible.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
I am almost finished with, recording it, and it has been the most healing journey to love all the different versions of myself and to in writing the book and when I finish writing and to now go back and read and love her, just love
Yeah.
her all the way
Oh,
through it has been Not
No.
doing it as a performance, doing it as real. And um, here's the presence of this woman loving that little girl
Yeah.
and that young woman that did the very best she could with what she knew.
So powerful.
Thank you.
Kerri, unfortunately, our time is up today, but I I hope that you'll come back.
I would love to. I would love to, Mary. It's
There's
been
so much to
such a
unfold to your
blessing
story.
to
Yeah.
chat with you today. Thank you.
Such a beautiful soul. And to all of our listeners, please eh, listen to this podcast again and again. Every time, I promise you, you're going to learn something and hear something different of the power of learning to stand, the power of gratitude for
Mm.
everything that was placed in our path so we get to be who we are today, and the power of forgiveness of self. Kerri stands as a witness of this. I love you all. Until next week, remember to be about crafting your meaningful life. Namaste.
Crafting a Meaningful Life.